Many years ago, things like mosquitoes, no-see-ums, and humidity made these top 10 lists of the
worst things about living in Florida.
But Florida's problems are mounting at an alarming rate, to the point where mosquitoes, no-see-ums, and humidity are no longer making these top 10 lists because there's a few new things that are entering the realm of living in Florida that are mounting problems that didn't exist before. On today's video, we're going to be talking about the top 10 reasons why people are leaving the state of Florida. Now, this is not my opinion. This is why people are leaving the state of Florida. And this is raw and uncut. I talk to people. I've talked to a lot of people leaving the state of Florida. And these are the reasons why they are leaving. And again, this isn't my opinion, so don't get mad at me for these 10 reasons people are leaving. I'm not the one that made these things happen. I'm just the one making a YouTube video about why these people are leaving.
I can't sit here and cater to your sensibilities. If you've been watching Fox News and they haven't been telling you a few things, okay? I can't cater to your sensibilities. So if you've been listening to Fox News, you might want to cover your ears.
So during COVID, a lot of people moved to Florida because they didn't have to wear a mask. Interestingly, those are the same people that are now leaving the state of Florida for various reasons. But I'm going to tell you some of the reasons that people are telling me is why they are absolutely leaving the state of Florida. They can't take it anymore. It's not working out for them. Number one is the state's governor. Now, interestingly enough, the people that don't like the governor and are leaving because of the governor, many of them originally came to the state of Florida because of the governor's policies, but they are now disenchanted. And we can say that in general, the governor of Florida and the direction he's taking is so extreme that even people that are part of his political party are getting fed up with it. And one of the number one reasons that people are leaving the state of Florida right now is because the policies that the governor is passing are taking one direction, and a direction that people simply do not like. SB 1718 had people that were U.S. citizens, residents of Florida, leave the state because their family members were going to leave because of the new policies. New policies that were not really being enforced. In fact, I'm looking outside my window right now at a group of workers, and I'm pretty sure maybe only the driver could have a U.S. citizen status. The vast majority of these workers are going to be illegal, and nothing changed in the state of Florida. It was all just to get clout and to be on the front page of newspapers. And that type of attention seeking is what people are really being turned off by. A lot of African Americans left the state of Florida when he did the whole thing with the schools. Now he's making laws to protect African American, blah, blah, blah. But of course, that's just a cover story to make up for the fact that a lot of African Americans actually left the state of Florida, and many African Americans that were planning to move to Florida decided not to move to Florida. So now he's making all these laws to try to, make up for the fact that he did something that scared away African Americans. But at the end of the day, the damage is done, and well, the motives are clear. He's made laws that have disproportionately targeted Hispanics, disproportionately target African Americans. The homeless population is now facing new laws, and it just seems that anybody who's not rich and white is being targeted by laws in the state of Florida, and even some of the rich and white people are starting to have enough of it. For example, SB 1718, many of the people that were living illegally in Florida or not U.S. citizens were working in the medical field. Now, this was a surprise to a lot of people, including myself. After SB 1718, the medical field in Florida had to scramble because it turns out that one of the main industries that was being supported by people who were not here legally was the medical field. Imagine this. The doctor has the license, and the people that are actually practicing are all the people from other countries. Venezuelans, Colombians, Ukrainians, Russians. These people are real doctors. They're the ones actually doing the surgeries, but the one that holds the license is the doctor, quote unquote. He really isn't doing too much. In fact, he was up till 4 in the morning snorting coke off a hooker, and at 9 in the morning you're scheduled for your surgery. Well, it turns out that that surgery was usually being done by those people that are no longer in the state of Florida. Many of them left for Georgia, California. Many of these quote-unquote doctors in Florida, they're making hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they're not really practicing medicine. All they were really doing is snorting coke off a hooker's back till 4 in the morning. And at 9 in the morning, when you have your surgery, you're in the hands of somebody who is absolutely not with it. And what's happened in the state of Florida is that this shortage in the medical field lended itself perfectly for a lot of bad surgeries. And in the state of Florida right now, the amount of people that are having surgeries gone wrong is ridiculously through the roof. Now, the Florida Health does track how many people die on surgical beds throughout the state by county, but we're not going to know that information right away. But I suspect that after SB 1718, the number of people that are dying during surgeries in the state of Florida has to at least have doubled in many counties. And so on, so on. The adverse effects of all these laws that the governor is signing are having somewhat negative effects, sometimes in places that were not expected. For example, the medical field was hit very hard by this law, and now the people of Florida are struggling to find doctors. They're struggling to have surgeries, and when they do have surgeries, they're finding that the results many times are very disappointing. In fact, we can say that number 2, the second reason why people are leaving the state of Florida, is because of how bad healthcare is in Florida. And the new laws that the governor recently signed only made it worse. People are finding that back home where they were, they had better access to doctors. Healthcare was just better in general. Medical care in Florida really is among the worst states. It's plagued with fraud. It's plagued with bad doctors. It's plagued with people who even get fake licenses. On top of that, you also have people who practice medicine in Florida clandestinely, and many people go to those places to get a lot of their dental work and other medical care done because so many people in the state don't have health care, or if they do have health care, it's fairly inefficient. And if you do have good insurance, then your doctors are constantly trying to submit you to procedures that you don't need. Many times these procedures have fatal results. In other words, people are exploiting the system and having all types of work done on people who are insured, work that many times is unnecessary, but they tell you you need it so they can milk your insurance company. And many people in the state of Florida have had complications because of exactly that scenario. Number 3 is traffic congestion, particularly in the southern part of the state. So many snowbirds come down here during the winter, and the state really cannot handle this many people. There's not enough infrastructure. Something as simple as going to a restaurant can mean you could have a 2-hour wait, which means that living in Florida during the wintertime when the state is overpopulated by snowbirds becomes a nightmare. Driving across town, we usually take 15 minutes, could turn into an hour-and-a-half drive. A recent study found that the suburbs of Fort Myers, like Lehigh Acres, have commute times on par with New York City. This makes life extraordinarily aggravating for people, and a lot of people have just had it with the traffic congestion in Florida, and they want to move somewhere where traffic congestion isn't part of everyday life. Number 4, the cost of insurance. Many people in Florida are now paying as much as $6,000 a year to insure an affordable property in the state. When I lived in the Fort Myers area, when I had 2 newer vehicles, my insurance rate for my 2 vehicles was over $500. That means that insuring your vehicles and your home becomes almost the salary of a minimal earning wage worker, which is about what the average person in Florida is anyways. Since number 5 is the lack of good paying jobs. In the state of Florida, there's the 1% of earners, and then there's the 99%. The 99% of earners in Florida are actually making less than the 99% in Alabama. Because Florida is a tax burden state where people come to escape high taxes in other states, you have a lot of 1% earners. So when you look at the income for a city, that income really represents vastly those people that are coming to Florida so they don't have to pay taxes. But if you were to take away that 1%, just look at the 99%, incomes in Florida are absolutely abysmal. Finding a job in the state of Florida pays between $17 to $22, when many regions of the state currently are on par with California and New York City. Only goes to show that you are having some of the highest prices for living, but some of the lowest wages in the country. And that makes jobs in Florida a horrible adventure to have to go on. Many people that are leaving the state of Florida right now are telling me that they have job offers in New York City or somewhere else, and they're leaving the state for better job opportunities. Number 6 is property taxes. Many of the places that were affordable many years ago are having an increase in property taxes. Places like Cape Coral, Florida, your property taxes are also about half what a working class person would make in a year, which means that what some people thought would be a dream to move to Florida and have no income taxes, well, you don't have any income, so you don't have too much income taxes, but you do have a lot of property taxes. Many people are becoming uncomfortable with how much their property taxes are increasing, and because many people are buying homes that don't have access to infrastructure, in the future I believe it's only going to get worse. For example, if the environmental concerns that the state is facing, like with everybody being on septic tanks and well waters, could mean that in the future there could be assessments for the introduction of infrastructure, which does not exist in many communities that are fast growing, like Fort Myers, places like Lehigh Acres, Northport. These places don't have any infrastructure. And when they do get it, or when these unincorporated areas do become incorporated, people are going to find that they cannot afford their property taxes. I met a lady in Titusville, Florida, who told me that her property taxes went up so much that she is now considering selling her home and moving out of the state because the combined cost of all these things we're talking about has literally driven her out of her home. In other words, her house is paid off, but just things like property taxes, insurance, and things of that nature have got so out of hand that somebody on a fixed income or a retirement has to decide whether they're going to pay these obligations or eat. Number 7 is HOA fees. You had people that were paying $200, $150 for HOA fees, and now they're being jacked up to between $460 to $930 a month. Yes, there's actually people that are seeing 500% increases in their HOA fees. They bought a house, and at some point it was a simple $200 HOA fee, but after hurricanes, assessments, and many of the changes in laws within the realm of insurance and property taxes also reflect on HOA fees, which means that now many of those costs are part of people's HOA fees, and they simply cannot afford it. On top of that, HOA fees in Florida are pretty much a piñata where they can do whatever the crap they want. There's not really anything to control or structure these HOAs. It's literally a fraud where you never actually get to own your property because somebody in HOA fee gets to lord it over you. And things are not going to get better in the state of Florida because from the zoning aspect, many of the land that's being rezoned is being rezoned specifically for gated communities by big developers, and nothing is being rezoned so that the average person can buy a piece of land where they can get access to city utilities. That pretty much doesn't even exist in the state of Florida right now, which means that these HOAs have a grip on a huge portion of the real estate market, and it's only getting larger, especially with all these investors buying properties in Florida. But at the end of the day, these people that are on fixed incomes cannot afford these 500% increases in their HOAs, and they're having to leave the state. They don't have another option. If only there was a YouTuber who was telling people not to buy houses that have HOAs in the state of Florida and warning people that these things would happen. Oh, there was all along. Oh, but nobody listened to him. Oh, okay. Well, find out now. Number 8, regionalism. Now, regionalism is when you don't like people that are from somewhere else. In the case of South Florida, or Florida in general, a lot of people from the north have moved to the south, and many people from the Caribbean have also moved to the state of Florida. And many of the people that are from Florida, because they're regionalistic, they don't like people from other regions, and thus they are moving to the deep south to be around people that are like them from the same region. Regionalism is very prevalent in the state of Florida. All you have to do is open up a Facebook group that talks about growth and development, and you'll see these comments that are regionalistic, telling people from the north that they shouldn't be in the south, so on, so on. Regionalism is why a lot of people are leaving the state of Florida. They simply don't want to live next to people from somewhere else of the country. And that is absolutely absurd, but that's the stupidity that some people have in their brains. If only there was a place where people from one region of the country couldn't move to another. Oh wait, there is. Cuba, a communist country. Did you know that in the country of Cuba, people from the eastern part of the island are not allowed to move to the western part of the island? And if you're moving from one province to the next, the government has to specifically allow you to do that. This is called regionalism within the country of Cuba, a communist country, where the government decides where people get to live based off of what region of the country they're from. And anyone from the eastern end of the island that moves to the capital city of Havana on the western side of the country is considered an illegal immigrant within their own country because they're not in the region of the country they were born in. This is called regionalism, and it happens throughout the entire world. and it's predominantly communist countries that prevent people from moving from one region of the country to the other. But this is the same ideology that people in the South have, where they believe that people from the North shouldn't be able to live in the South. But, well, at the end of the day, these people are leaving the state of Florida because the war is lost, and they're going to find that when they move to North Carolina and Alabama, that the people there aren't going to want them because, well, they're not from the same region as well. The stupidity of it, but a lot of people really are leaving the state of Florida because of regionalism. These people really do believe that they can't live in Florida anymore because all the people from up north are coming down here, which I don't give a crap where somebody's from, but they do. And this is seriously leading to a large migration of people out of the state of Florida because of their regionalistic views. But this anti-constitutional ideology that violates the freedom of movement is what these people believe in, and they're more ideologically close to something like communism, where they believe the government should dictate where people get to live based off the region of the country they're from. It goes completely against the principles of the U.S. Constitution, but that's what they believe in. Number 9, hurricanes. When I left the state of Florida back in the COVID era, hurricanes were on the top of the reasons why I left the state. It's not the experience of going through a hurricane because it's scary. A lot of people actually leave because of the experience. But it's really the aftermath that sucks. 6 to 9 months where utilities, water, electricity, access to things you're used to like restaurants, everything is limited. Restaurants go to half menus. Now the state of Florida with the current governor have made changes to prompt some type of like emergency level. So when a hurricane happens, the response time has been incredibly improved. The state of Florida over the last few years has done a great job of orchestrating some of the best recovery efforts ever. You have to give praise where praise is due. Florida really has improved greatly the response time after hurricanes. Social media has played a huge role in this issue. Now with social media, they can't do things the way they like to do them in the state of Florida. For example, many times the African American or Hispanic communities were the last to have their power put back on after a hurricane. I remember after Hurricane Charlie, our neighborhood was one of the last neighborhoods in the entire city to get anything put back on because it was a poor Hispanic community. And we're talking all the other people got their power back on 2 weeks before we did because we were a poor neighborhood. However, because of social media, it used to be like you had Wink News and NBC and they were the news. Now with social media, the average person is the news, and they're not able to do what they used to do, which was to give the power back to the rich people and life goes back to normal for them. But then all the working class people are screwed for weeks, sometimes even months without power. The power of social media means that they had the news crews in Harlem Heights in Florida, outside of Fort Myers, making sure that the black people were among the first to get their power back on because they knew from the past that's how things happen and that's how people expected things to happen. And now with the invention of social media, they can't do that anymore. Interestingly enough, Harlem Heights is no longer an African-American community because nobody there seemed to own their properties. And after Hurricane Ian, well, the black people moved out and the Hispanics that were working on construction moved in. And now Harlem Heights is predominantly a Hispanic community. Interesting. But at the end of the day, in the state of Florida, hurricane efforts have had to improve. But that doesn't mean that people aren't fed up with it. And for a lot of people like myself, even though they can get power back on, it's still a long and lengthy process to get your life back together. After Hurricane Ian, I moved out of Fort Myers like the week after. I had enough of it. I had already experienced Hurricane Irma about 3 years before, and I was done and over with hurricanes. I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. Again, I don't mind the actual hurricane when it happens. It's the actual aftermath that makes life complicated and irritating. People that lose their homes and lose everything become desperate. Then they're out there road raging, people angry at the world because their lives got flipped upside down by a hurricane. Even though there was a YouTuber telling you this whole time, hey, you probably shouldn't move here if you don't mind being homeless. You guys remember the year and two before Hurricane Ian hit, how I was drilling the point home that maybe you shouldn't move to Fort Myers if you're afraid of hurricanes. If you buy a property, the whole thing can get washed out and then the insurance company may not pay you for repairs. Wasn't there a YouTuber telling you that the whole time? Well, some people had a hard time hearing and they found out the hard way. Now those houses are empty and those people didn't get a check from the insurance companies. Oh, and let's not forget they put all their money into buying the property, but now they don't have money for the assessments that it's going to take to repair those communities back to the state it was before the hurricane destroyed everything. If only there was somebody on YouTube that was warning people about the situation before it happened. Oh wait, there was. Oh, okay, just making sure. I love when people move to Florida and they think that the bad part of a hurricane is the actual experience of going through the hurricane, and they have no idea that that's not even the worst part of a hurricane, but they'll find out eventually. But anyways, even I, a lifelong Floridian, have just about had it with hurricanes. Number 10, finally, false expectations. Many people actually believed everything they heard on YouTube and social media and coming out of the mouth of politicians, and they moved to Florida with very unrealistic expectations. They thought that they would have higher earning jobs, that they would have greater safety, and of course that they would never have to see another homeless person again. But in reality, the state of Florida is plagued with the same problems as anywhere else. Many times these false expectations were because of misinformation. People were told that if they moved to Florida, that everything's being done the right way here. But they failed to mention that the state of Florida has been chronically plagued with lack of industries, very few investments in jobs, low incomes. There's a lot of endemic problems to the state of Florida, and many times these people had no idea what they were actually getting when they moved down here. And well, unrealistic expectations led many people to move to Florida, and now they're finding out a huge disappointment that things here were not as great as they thought they would be. Many people leaving Florida are leaving Florida because they moved here and their expectations were not realistic. It was this glamorized ideology, but they find out that all the things we've gone over today, plus a few more things we're not going to mention on today's list. Many years ago, these top 10 lists were things like mosquitoes, no-see-ums, and humidity. Let me tell you, the mosquitoes and no-see-ums and the humidity are still present in the state of Florida, but they have become absolutely insignificant to the current problems that the state is facing. And that should just give you an idea in what general direction the state of Florida is heading when things like humidity and mosquitoes and no-see-ums are no longer making it on these top 10 lists. There's just not enough room for them.